The guys try to take the field this week, but first we have to hand out a yellow card. Find out what we mean on this week's episode of the Indie Ball Report podcast. We're back again, episode 275 of the Indie Ball Report podcast, and we have to hand out yellow cards this week, but you're not going to hear about that until the end of the show because Phase Fest was last week. Actually, it was 2 weeks ago. That makes this worse.
Yeah, dude, it's like the ongoing, ever-present Indie Ball plot line, which is dumb things that happen to fields.
Sometimes they're lit on fire. Other times, they just get randomly vandalized. Other times, tequila, T-Pain, and teenage angst kill your field.
Don't forget the holes in the mounds.
Oh yes, sometimes you fall on through. But when you have a big boy like JJ on the mound,
Hoove, JJ Hoovastank.
Is that the guy with the Pokemon cards?
Dude, love JJ. It's all good.
Hey, he's a baller.
Supporting JJ.
He's not he's a baller, but not a baller.
No, but I mean,
I bet there's more people watching his Pokemon live streams than going to Oakland Baller games.
Not even going there.
I don't mean this as a slight towards Oakland. I just think he's got that good of a personality. I think there's more of a demand for Pokemon. And it's a bit easier to stream a Pokemon pack unveiling than it is to go to Oakland at 6:30 at night.
Good save there, Nick.
I think so. Talk about saving things and saves that have failed. Let's talk about the Eugene Emeralds, which are not an Indie Ball team, but could be soon.
Yeah, man. Do you want to cover the details?
I suppose I could go over the details and then we could talk about it. The Eugene Emeralds, they're based in Eugene, Oregon. They declined public funding for a new ballpark. Now, the team didn't decline it. The citizens of Eugene declined to give them the money. That's an important way.
By the way, that's a different conversation.
Exactly. So the team's current facility, which I believe is currently the University of Oregon, does not meet MLB standards, or rather standards established by Major League Baseball. That's a nice way of saying in 2020 when MLB put the entire minor league system over a barrel and basically said, you're going to do all this shit for us for free, or we're just going to throw you to the wolves. Their ballpark didn't meet that. So, yeah. And again, there's no real viable path forward in the area, and they're under pressure to move the club or, lose the whole affiliation thing. So either way, the fine people of Eugene look like they're going to be left out in the cold. Yeah. So this leads to the question, could this be a possible expansion destination for the Mavericks League? That'd be boring. Or say the Pioneer League, which would be much less boring.
I mean, yes, but there's so many questions still to be answered because it's like the reason some of these teams are at all potential expansion destinations for a Pioneer League, for example, is because they have a ballpark already. And if you don't have a ballpark, it really puts you to square one as if you're not even an existing organization.
I suppose, but there's plenty of examples of indie ball teams playing on college campuses before, even on the Division I level. Look at Lincoln.
Even current. Look at YOLO.
True.
So, I know. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying there's still a lot of complications that need to be resolved then.
In fairness, this move wouldn't take place for another 2 to 4 years. So
true. So there would be time to build something, but those taxpayers.
I'm not even build it, but so much as work out a deal with the
working out a deal. But once you're working out a deal, wouldn't you figure they would just stay with their current situation?
Well, see, here's the thing. I still think that what's going to happen is they're not going to get this ballpark built. That team's going to be gone. At the very least, the affiliation's going to be gone. So I think that area is still going to want some sort of baseball. No, I think it'll be a far more likely possibility that you get, say, some kind of summer college ball, if not at the University of Oregon, because I'm not sure what the NCAA rules are around having a summer college team on a campus. I don't know what that whole deal is. I don't think it'd be a problem.
I believe the draft league playing basically at Penn State.
Yeah, and I was going to say Vermont, I think, went to a summer college thing, and they play on a college campus, if I'm not mistaken, there. So I don't imagine it'd be a problem, but who knows with the NCAA? They picked the weirdest hills to die on.
Right.
But, well, at the same time, just kind of casually allow a conference to be sponsored by an insurance company, you know.
Classic.
Any case, to my point is, I think there's still going to be a demand for some sort of baseball there. And so if you have a 2 to 4 year window there, that allows you time for you, say, the Pioneer League to say, hey, what do we have to do to get a team on this campus, and work it out with the administration, with whoever you may have to work it out with. It provides time for them.
I mean, it is noteworthy that a 4-minute drive away from Eugene Emeralds, there is a college summer team.
That does make
Shout
the summer
out
college
the
thing.
Springfield Drifters. Though I do think, I mean, it's still, that's the only thing that makes me think it's unlikely, because, I mean, why bother at that point? Though the Emerald's a solid brand, I assume there's some good money put into it. I'm just trying to think what the options are going to look like here. I don't know, man. I mean, look, it's obvious. If you're the Pioneer League, you have to at least sniff around. You have to talk to them.
Yeah. Especially with certain teams not being around for the long haul, potentially.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We'll leave it there.
As has been rumored. I'm just looking at what else. I mean, this is, I didn't really realize this. I mean, I didn't realize how on the campus it was, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, like it's on the campus.
I didn't, like, it is like the Penn State situation where it's literally playing in the shadow of the football stadium. That's funny. Yeah, dude. It's interesting. It's a situation I've been watching for a while. I think it's going to be the list of things have to fall into place to get this going and end up in indie ball with an actual organization. It's a long list. What did it say specifically? Because that is something that hasn't always been noted. Is what exactly caused the need for this project to happen?
I think it was just a matter of they didn't have a ballpark that met the MLB standard.
That's all it is.
Yeah. And they said that they don't think they'll have one by the 25 cutoff date.
So it isn't an issue of Oregon not wanting them, the college not wanting them.
No. There
were early articles that seem to be thinking that, but I haven't seen any of those recently. So, I mean, if that is the case, it does make indie ball a more relevant situation, because then you just remove yourself entirely from the affiliate thing. Now, of course, that is easier said than done. I mean, there's plenty of money wrapped up in that, so they're probably going to try to exhaust every option to stay affiliated before. I mean, not only do you get money for being affiliated, but you also spend more money not being affiliated. So there's a lot there.
Do we know whatever happened with the Hillsborough Hops situation?
I thought it was rectified. I'll double check to make sure that actually happened, because I thought Eugene was rectified. Yeah,
I'm just looking at it real quick here, and that never got sorted out. I mean, this could then be kind of a California 2.0 type situation.
There were two teams. That's an actually plausible situation. That's right. In March, you got $15 million for the stadium.
So I'm borrowing that falling through then. Yeah. Because you had the two, one in the Portland area, one in Eugene. I don't know quite how far that is, but it would appear to be at least doable, especially by Pioneer League standards. You run this same kind of setup back division-wise and everything. Mm-hmm. And you could start to build something out. I know in the past when we've talked about this Pioneer League expansion, if they wanted to make that West Coast swing, Oregon was one of those areas where like there's a lot of possible markets here. So I was curious about that.
Yes. I mean, I think it's maybe the most fertile ground for expansion for any ball at this point. Now, I will say and this is why I actually caught these two teams, as they caught my eye to begin with before the California expansion even happened. They are two teams that do stand out in the conversation of distance to their MLB team. Yep. They are sort of far flung. I mean, with Eugene going to San Francisco, and with Hillsborough going to Arizona, that's especially. And with some shuffling of, remember, there's probably going to be markets eventually opening up with Oakland with their move.
Yes.
Assuming that there's going to be some shuffling of minor league teams potentially there, which is 100%. They might keep what they've got, but I could see them possibly trying to switch that around a little bit. That also, if a team more southern opens up as a minor league possibility, I could see that either organization wanting to take that opportunity if possible. So that is worth considering as well. I don't know.
I do wonder too, when you eventually have MLB expansion, once Oakland sorted out and I assume Tampa Bay is sorted out, how does that affect things as well? Because you're going to have to add more affiliates back in.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of talk about what that could mean. I mean, assuming it would be southeastern expansion or northeastern.
Portland.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I don't take that seriously. I mean, you're going to go to a market that currently has a summer ball team. Like Portland loves to talk like they've ever really successfully kept a team. And it's like, all right, how are the Blazers doing? Like, sorry, like not to be a bummer. I don't take Portland seriously as a market. I would take Vancouver more seriously than that.
You sound like someone that runs from the grind.
God, yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Why I chose
a jump
indie ball for shenanigans' sake.
Switching teams, running from the grind.
Shut up. Nashville's the interesting one there, right? I think if Nashville, there are certain organizations I have long theorized are relevant and have people paying for them on the hope that they would be tapped for a minor league team. I'm looking at Lexington, looking at Bowling Green for Nashville. And then honestly, there's a few other options that could be relevant there, but those are the type of ones that I look at. It's not as rich of a sort of market for that kind of thing on the West Coast. That's all. But then there's sleeper options in there that could really mess things up. Marysville, underrated ballpark that is definitely playable. The very existence of Tucson and that stadium in Arizona is a bit of a situation. I think if you're a team that's in danger and you're affiliated with an Arizona team, I mean look, do you want to be playing outdoor baseball all summer in Arizona? No, not necessarily, but it's been done. So I do think there's still some question marks there that could affect the situation.
Yeah.
That also is why I think people keep paying for Lexington, by the way. Because I think if Nashville goes affiliate, goes
going to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, dude. I mean, your prime position at ballpark can hold like 7,000 people.
I mean, yeah, it was built for that. So
it was built for that, and then became a short A season or short A ballpark. That sucks, dude. They did get host.
Stonks. Big stonks vibe.
Man, it's so funny. Just the pioneer. I'm looking at a map of MILB and MLB, and it's just funny the Pioneer League sized hole in the map out west.
Do we have anything else to really add in on this, or
I don't think so. There's just too many question marks right now, so it's all going to be hypothetical.
Okay. So on that note, then I guess we'll move on to recapping the week that was. Let's start in the Frontier League because it's been a while since we started and let off with them.
Dude,
so
it's been a while. When's the last time Stain had a hit? It's been a while.
Lake Erie.
Leave that in the podcast, I swear on my life.
Lake Erie.
Yes, sir. They're getting hot. I mean, they took an L tonight, but they're getting there.
Yeah, they are fighting the fraud allegations, certainly. Lone team at 20 wins, 8-2 in the last 10 coming into the night, 3.16 ERA. As a staff on the year, looks good. Batting's getting better. Had a 7-game winning streak prior to play today. And I mean, they took a couple against some weaker teams. You know, Evansville, they took 2 and they swept 3 Rivers, which I think is still a solid sweep. Definitely a team that I think you win 3 in a row against. It's worth noting. But they also took 2 against Schaumburg. Nearly got the sweep. Didn't pull it out today. But still, I like this team. I think they're coming into form. They have 3 against Florence at Florence this week, and then they head home to play 3 against Gateway. So they definitely can rack up some wins this week, and I'm going to be curious to see if they can keep the hot play or not.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the news update as of end of play tonight is they are not only not the only 20-win team, they are also not in first place anymore because Washington is now 20-9.
Yeah, I've seen they just pulled that out. Yeah,
but Washington also looks good. That's a different conversation. Yeah, there is some potential wins here. Gateway is a tough series. That'll be a learning series for sure about Lake Erie. The West is staying competitive, thankfully, right around the last playoff spot because it looked for a little bit like it could go sideways on us early, but the pack is definitely separated though, huh? Like, who do you think is the most likely team from the Joliet, Windy City, Evansville, Florence crew to make it a race for that last spot? If you had to pick one team, who do you think it would be?
Right, it was Joliet, Windy City,
Evansville, or Florence, the bottom 4. Which, for those listening, I mean, in 4th place is Gateway. They're 2 games behind Schaumburg for the last playoff spot. And then there's a gap down to Joliet, who is 7.5 back, so 4.5 games behind Gateway. And then it's basically everyone else is more than half a week away from the 4th spot. So you're going Joliet?
I'm saying Joliet on the premise of I like their leadership a little bit better. And I think they have still a little bit more potential to turn things around. That being said, Windy City has definitely surprised me so far. I think the fact that they're keeping it maybe not near 500, but not that far off from it is impressive. And they've certainly had some good performances. They also just lost the pitcher, though, to Mexico. So that's going to work against them, certainly. Florence, I think we can just safely disregard here. And while Evansville is starting to round into form a little bit, I think they kind of dug themselves too deep of a grave to really possibly even, put themselves into this conversation. Now, I know some are going to say, like, oh, it's only 2 games difference. But, 2 games is a lot, right? It's a lot and it's not a lot at the same time. It's something you definitely can overcome, but you need things to go in your favor to overcome them. It's not the kind of thing that you could just kind of, power through and get.
Right. And they've won their last 2 series, but they're just tough because I'm looking, they had a really bad start and they've kind of righted the ship a bit since, but so they've won last 2 series, but that was against Florence and Tri-City, which again, what is Tri-City? Because they get hot and then they go and they play Evansville and they win 9-2 and then lose 6-1, 15-4. What are we doing here? And then they played Lake Erie before that and lost 2 out of 3. And they lost 2 out of 3 to Gateway in really weird fashion, just 3 blowouts in a row in that series. So I don't know what to make of Evansville at all. I want to say because of it's the same. Because Evansville, they just came a game away from the championship. They're right there. But I'm also I don't know. I do think Joliet, I think, is more likely to not go. Mainly because I think Joliet's more likely to not completely fall out of this. I think they're more likely to stay within a week of this for a long period of time, within a week of the 4th spot that we're talking about, than the other teams involved in this conversation. Though Windy City is interesting. I agree wholeheartedly on that front.
Windy City is the definition of a team where when we go back and we do the retrospective on each of these leagues, which we definitely should do in more October, November.
Yes, agreed.
Where it's still fresh in mind.
Yeah.
But their team, when we do this retrospective, I'm going to be very interested to see what our thoughts are on it because this is a weird season in a good way for them. And I think it's a definite step in the right direction. I think Bobby Jenks is doing a very good job there, and I hope he stays for at least another 2 or 3 years so that we can really see what they can do. That being said, I don't disagree about Evansville. I see your reasoning. It's just I think Joliet has a little bit of a step better, and they really haven't lost as much as far as the roster goes, in the sense of Evansville just hasn't put it together at all yet.
Yeah,
I don't really see them putting it together. Joliet, at least at points, has looked like they started to get together. And of the guys that have gotten it together, their roster's still mostly intact. And looking at it, it does look like Joliet just can't win shit on the road.
Right? Okay.
So, that's a major issue. And now they have another 6 games on the road.
So we'll see. We might feel differently about this after that, but
yeah. But they do come home to play Florence and then have another 6 on the road.
fun. How fun is that?
Good news is, though, they open up July with 9 at home.
That's useful. I mean, right.
I mean, they actually only have 2 road series in all of the month. Okay.
I remember
actually, here's the thing.
Now, yeah.
If you look at their schedule the rest of the way, they only have one more major road trip the whole way. And once they get through this next little stretch here, from July on, their only like back-to-back road series is August 16th through 22nd against Schaumburg and Washington. The rest of it's home or like a 3-game set on the road. So that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Benefit to playing the road games early.
I agree, but I'm also like, I don't know. They still got to win some damn road games. You know.
Well, here's the thing. Like, the next 6 aren't great, but then it's Evansville, which should be a split, and Schaumburg, which who knows what they're going to be like in the end of the month.
I follow you there. I don't know. I just can't shake. Boy, Windy City, their offense is concerning.
Well, it always is.
It's a big thing, but
their offense is always concerning, though. So, like, it's not, you know.
The big issue for me with Florence, by the way, which we just breezed over Florence completely, is like this is the complete opposite of what we were dealing with previously, right? I mean,
yeah,
this is a team that like last year, what Chad Rhodes takes over, and it was pitching heavy, if I recall.
Yes, it was.
Pulling the stats again, but yeah, pretty much, and then offensive mid pack. But yeah, they were. Oh no, pitching was terrible last year too. So I don't know, dude. But no, that was a lot of that was ballpark. A lot of that was ballpark, though. Like I remember when you put ballpark factor involved with that, like they actually were toward the top. And you look at WAR, they were pretty close to the top. So even though they gave up a lot of runs, all in all, it wasn't that bad of an effort. But yeah, I don't know, dude. In short, I don't know. Florence is a disaster.
You would think a guy that was a pitching coach, though, would be able to pitch good. We'll get the guys to pitch.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting that's been a struggle. But anyhow, yeah, that's what I got on that. I mean, can I just say my thing on the East? Because
I was about to say I want to go to the East next. So.
I mean, we now have both Jersey teams behind New England. Good Lord.
You know, I was going to mention Sussex in this. I was planning to mention New Jersey, but yeah, now they are behind them. Although it is technically, in fairness to New Jersey, they're being punished right now because they played an extra game.
Sure.
Like, it's still not good. I'm not going to defend this.
Yeah. But, it's bad. They've lost 5 in a row. I mean, it's called what it is here. Now, my question, though, is has there ever been an endorsement now so strong as the endorsement that this is all giving to Bobby Jones?
You know, it's a really good point. One I didn't think of until you just said it, but as soon as you said it, I was like, when Bobby looked both of these, the only counter I would say that is in the case of Sussex, they were still a playoff team last year. They were still a good enough team last year.
But Bobby was still involved last year. Bobby was still doing baseball operations last year.
But how much of it was just focusing on Sussex as opposed to now splitting time with New Jersey?
He wasn't doing much with Jersey at all.
Okay, so then
it was almost entirely PJ's mix, as evidenced by the initial roster, which was entirely offense and no pitching. He got better at it. I will stand up for him on that one. He got better for it. Like he's better at recruiting pitching, and he was so good at it this year that he lost his entire pitching staff in 2 weeks to signing. So, congrats, PJ. I'm best of luck with this the rest of the year, my guy. But back to the Bobby thing. Like I don't know, man. Kind of looking like a baller.
An Oakland baller?
No.
But yeah, no. I mean, it's not. it's good good for him, but not good for these teams. I mean, it's just
This is bad.
yeah. I mean, like Sussex, I think is especially concerning. New Jersey, we walked in, we're like first year manager, not
There's
a
a
great
million
roster to
reasons
start
why
with.
Jersey should be 11-9. There's
Yeah.
no real good reason why Sussex should be 10-19.
That's it. I mean, like 8 straight is not good. Getting swept by New England, not good.
I mean,
Swept by Tri-City,
holy
not
hell,
good.
dude. Getting
And they should have been swept by
England.
the Boulders too, if not for a postponed game.
No, and there's bigger things with that too.
Yeah.
They rolled in despite the tough run there. If they played like I mentioned in my video on the weekend, was talking about how like they basically came in with a spot to sweep the knockouts and be like in the playoff hunt. Like, I mean, really in it. They were 11 wins. I think they were like a game out of the playoffs, and then they get just punched in the mouth by New England for 3 in a row. Unacceptable. And now they're sitting there and they're like, what, 4.5, 5 out, 5 games out of a playoff spot. Like,
Yeah.
buddy, you can't have that.
What's concerning is that they just keep losing and they keep getting their ass handed to them in these losses too. It's not like they're close losses. And you look across the board when your team is slashing, 240, 329, or 327, and 337. Jesus Christ, they're only slugging 337.
I know.
That's really concerning to me. And I mean, I'm looking right now, and I get it. There's some younger guys here. You have Giordano that's Pro 1, Sayer that's Pro 1, Mateo Pro 2, Anu Pro 2, Acton Pro 2, Mead Pro 2. Like, I get it. There's guys there that are younger guys. There's not really a lot of experienced guys. I mean, Agresti is, but to be blunt, I mean, I think Kyle Richards is, outplaying him right at the moment. I think he really should be sliding in there. Stupinski, for a veteran spot, he's only gotten 3 games and didn't perform in those 3. So, like, I get it. It's a younger team, it's a younger staff overall, but I mean, there's just no one here. I mean, Corey Acton's solid. He's a good player. And Anu has a little bit of pop, and I have enough faith in him to turn it around. But I mean, over a strikeout a game is not encouraging.
So I have a question for you, which is more of a 2-parter, but I'll start with the more honed in one here.
Yeah, Gabriel Marcel also, by the way, is good.
What do you take from an 0-8 road trip? Like, part of me is like, at least it's confined. They were 10-11, now they're 10-19. 0-8 road trip. But I guess part of me is like, I'd rather have it be that than we sucked at home. We went on the road, we sucked there, and now we're back home again. This is like, boy, that road trip is a disaster. Glad that's over. Like, close the door. But I'm still damn, dude, 8.
I mean, the old saying is, if you're going to suck on the road. But
right, sure.
And I mean, if it is contained to just a road trip, you could chalk it up to stuff. I don't know what's happening in that room, so I don't really know. But to drop 8 in a row and not really show up for any of them,
I know.
I mean, I feel like it says more about the group than it does about anything else, right? Because at least, like, there's losing streaks where, there's blowouts in them, but there's a few that are hard-fought losses.
Yeah, I mean, they're scoring 3 runs a game.
Exactly. That's not a hard-fought loss. And, like, again, looking through this team, I'm like, the 7 games Kyle Richards played have been solid for him. Gabriel Marcel has been very good in his 22. Corey Acton's been very good in his 22.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Maciel, right?
Yeah, Maciel.
He, on the 11th, was just placed on Visa inactive list. Interesting.
Oh,
and I have a tidbit that we got to discuss. Remind me, I got one for you at the end of this Frontier League thing before we move on, by the way.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then you have Anu, and that's about it. Like,
yep.
And even now, Anu's slugging. He's just slumper right now. He's not doing well at all. Anu's slumping right now. Only 4 walks in 28 games to 33 strikeouts. That's not going to play. And he's got to step that up. At least he provides a little bit of power. 7 doubles, 3 home runs. So, of the 28 hits, almost half of them have been extra base hits. So that's something you could point to. But even still, I mean, it's when you got guys like John Mead, who's batting 186 – and has an on base of under 300. I mean, as an everyday player, like that's not going to work. Tony Gomez, another guy that's not going to work. 22 Ks in 26 games, under 300 on the on base. Like if you're going to strike out and you're not going to get on base, if you're going to be basically Anu, you have to provide some power. And even in his case, I'd like a little bit more power out of him. But you can't really get picky with this lineup. And obviously, I don't know what the dynamic is. I don't know what promises were made going into this year. But if I'm the manager of this team, quite frankly, I'm starting to mess with this lineup because it's clearly not working right now. And if anybody has anything to say about it, the simple response is the easiest way to keep your job is to perform and to win. You're not performing and we're not winning. So why should I keep things the same?
No, you're right. I got nothing on that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, then it becomes the capability to make that move, which is a different conversation, but we don't need to have that right now.
Yeah, I'm just going to look at the pitching while we're here. I mean, pitching wise, Tyler Thornton, he's reliable right now. Ledesma is he's fine. Stahl's fine. And Stahl's a little bit more than fine. As a bullpen guy, he does his job.
I mean, the thing that weirds me out, and look,
good.
It's a road trip, I get it, but like they've really not made moves either with Sussex. Yeah. Like they went 13 days, no, more than that, 15 days between roster moves. That's kind of wild.
Yeah. It almost tells me that they can't get other guys in.
There we go.
And if you can't get guys in, then we got to start asking, why can't you get guys in?
Is it because they don't want to go to Sussex? It's a question. People are talking.
Parsons isn't bad either, but then you got a guy like Curry here, and it's like the ERA is not terrible for a bullpen guy, but a 2 whip is pretty goddamn bad. Sorry, Billy, but
yeah, I mean they don't have.
But I mean, like that's not good. Like this is really not good right now. And I mean, there's certain guys like Reagan's a good example here, right? He's a starter. He started 6 games. He has 25 innings pitched. So you're not even giving me 5 innings to start. That's not great. That's not a great way to begin here. He has a 5.76 ERA and nearly a 2 whip, but he's averaging like 10 strikeouts per 9. So it's like, okay, so he kind of throws hard, but he also gets hit a lot. So what are we doing here? And like, I'm even noticing this among a lot of the other starters here, where it's like, you're not really getting more than 4 or 5 innings out of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just setting everything up to go bad. Like, fine. Like, it might be crazy to say, but I feel like indie ball is the place where you could try a lot of stuff because,
no, you're right.
Necessity is the mother of invention, but I'm almost okay with helping. Like,
and you got to figure some things out. And
yeah,
players got to start performing. It's like the time to start doing some stuff because managers need wins, players need results.
Yeah, and I feel like I would almost be fine going to like a 2-man rotation, and the other days you have starters, but they're more effectively openers where they're going to pitch, like 2-3 innings, and you basically just fill out with more bullpen guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand, there's a process in the wear and tear on guys that they can't throw every day, but if you're basically asking bullpen guys like, hey, you're going to throw 3 or 4 times a week, but you're only going to throw an inning or 2. Yeah, it may add up over time, but keep in mind, those aren't the guys you're going to have for the full year. So you're going to swap some guys in and out. And I feel like you could find a way to make that work. It may require you to carry less bench bats. But as we're seeing right now, it's not like they're using a lot of bench bats. It's like the same, 9 guys, 10 guys the whole way through here. So you could afford to drop some of these guys, right? Carry 11 guys that can swing the bat. And then go the rest pitching. Hell, get a couple 2-way pitchers, that can swing a bat. We see them in the Pioneer League.
Yes, find them left and right.
Exactly.
That's an optimistic take from you, my guy. I'll step in on that one.
Here's the thing. I know it's not realistic.
Just find indie ball Shohei. You'll be fine.
Look, unironically, I do wonder sometimes. It's like, look, if you need a guy that's just like, hey, bud, we need someone to go out and eat 4 innings. We don't care how many runs you give up here.
Fair enough. I see where you're going.
Yeah, like that kind of,
I'm also on the flip side.
That guy in the bullpen.
It's a fair bit of 2-way player action in college, even up to D1. and that can work just fine. And I'm like, does Frontier League dip in toward that level where it can work in the right situation? So I will give you that on that conversation.
Yeah. Especially because it's more or less in the context from what I'm saying of you roll out a reliever for 1 or 2 innings. And I feel like in the right setup, in the right situation, you can get away with it. Where it's like, okay, he's facing like the 8-9-1 hitters right now. He throws hard enough to where we could probably get away with this because these guys just don't have the play discipline to not swing. Like, I feel like you can maybe get away with that. I don't think you could ever let a guy like that go against, say, like, realistically, anywhere from the 3 hole down to about the 6. Those spots, I think, are like, oh, he's facing a 3-hitter. Yeah, go get him now.
Yeah.
Which creates other problems, but
I kind of keep just a running ranking of batters and pitchers. And look, it's based on my criteria, is what it is.
Yeah.
But I've got the top ranked Sussex County pitcher so far in my book is ranked 40th in Frontier League pitching. And I've got 2 batters for them inside the top 90 batters in the league.
Yep.
So it's tough. In summary, everything you just said.
Yeah, I think we're reaching that point. I just think we're reaching the point here where we got to start saying, all right, this isn't working. We got to come up with something else.
Right. Yeah, man. No, I agree. It's kind of shocking to see. Meanwhile, look, are they tied for like last in the division, basically, or a game of that? Yeah,
they are last in the division.
I've transitioned now, telling you because I'm a bad co-host.
Yeah.
Actually,
they're last in the league, by the way.
I think Bert's doing fine in New Jersey, by the way. I'll give him that. Oh, dude, they're last in the league. Yeah, for sure.
By a half game.
That is happening now.
Yeah.
Welcome to the party. Because, look, they got blitzed by Ottawa, and then they went to Quebec and got handled. But, Jersey,
they're kind of doing what we expect, I think.
They're hanging, dude. They're hanging. That's fine. They split with Ottawa. They did 3 with Quebec, which is a tough one. Going doubleheader into a bus trip to Quebec is tough. Now, I'd like to see them do a bounce back weekend with Ottawa. They got to get at least a game here, or I'm going to be like, well, forget everything I said. But I know Bert's doing what we thought.
Yeah, and he's reaching
the expectation. That's fine.
And here's the thing: he's got a lot of young guys here that are actually contributing. Trent Taylor's one. Luis Acevedo, another guy that's doing some stuff.
I was just really surprised to see not a lot of roster moving from Sussex in this situation.
Quebec's back, like you were saying a second ago.
So back.
They've won every series since the start of June, 8-2 in their last 10, and another little fun stat for you.
Mm-hmm.
They've outscored opponents in June 72 to 43. That's before we include tonight's game.
And they got
New York, New England, Gateway, and New Jersey in that stretch. So 2 impressive teams, 2 less impressive teams. But still, I think Quebec is doing the same thing they did last year.
And look at the stretch they've got right now. They got 3 against New England, 3 against Tri-City, who has not looked good.
Yeah, and New Jersey.
Of late, 3 New Jersey, 3 Sussex, and then they got the Boulders finally.
Oh boy, we could actually start to have a little bit of a race here, I think. And
yeah, do you have another? Do we have a Tri-City thought, by the way?
I had more of a New York thought. Just 5-5 in the last 10.
Yes.
They took, what was it, 1 of 3 from Ottawa, 2 of 3 from Tri-City in there.
Yeah.
So interesting there, but the Titan pitching largely shut them down tonight, excluded. So that's a little troubling to me. 4-3, 13-3 are just, I can excuse the 4-3 loss, but the 13-3 loss is not good.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this is the back end of a fairly long road trip.
Fair.
It's only 2 series, but it did go Friday to now, and you kind of run into that situation of you have the weird Monday off day while you're on the road. I don't know. So it doesn't even feel as much like an off day, but if you're around 500 for a road trip and you lose 2 out of 3 in the last series, I'm kind of pitching gets short, whatever. Especially in Canada, you have nothing. You can't call on anybody really because of visas and all that. You got what you got. So I can kind of excuse it. So I'm not going to read into it too much. Honestly, I took more from them taking 2 out of 3 from Tri-City. But mainly because I was looking to see what Tri-City would do more than anything.
Yeah, I here's the thing: when they get against real teams, they get a little pressed, and then the end of the road trip because Quebec gave them fits too.
I don't know what to make of that, though. I still think I'm more leaning toward the Boulders are legit rather than not. I mean, because also in this league, really, how many teams are doing more than beating up bad teams and going 500 against good teams?
In fairness, could we say the same thing about like Washington?
I would say something about Washington, in fact.
But we've called them non-legit, though, in the past.
I think after this past week, I'm feeling more comfortable calling them legit.
All right.
Another hot week.
All right.
Man. Feeling wild in here. They haven't lost a series since May 26th. In 3 weeks of winning series.
So, what else do we have in the Frontier?
2 quick ones here because neither of them really have an end to them. They're just thoughts. One, I will shout Greg Duncan, a Black Sox player, got signed by Durango. Going down.
Yes, I know. I did his player card that will be posted tomorrow.
Hell yeah, man! That's a boost for the Black Sox resume, man. Anytime you get a guy into Mexico, it's good vibes. I am hearing.
Sources are saying.
I still just need to like find the correct legal paperwork and give it a read. I don't know, but it's been a busy week. But what I'm hearing is that it sounds like there's a new, I don't want to call it a law, but like a new government policy in place, which has increased the fee associated with transferring a work visa. So that is extremely relevant. There was not a substantial fee before, and it would increase to like at least a couple thousand, I think, if what I'm hearing is correct. It is hard to explain how big a problem that could be for indie ball teams. It would be a substantial inconvenience. Like it is. I mean, it would basically rule out, with very few exceptions, transactions involving players with a visa, other than if you're going to release them. And I think it would also rule out those because you're not releasing a guy in a free agency. You're releasing a guy like basically just it screws them. So I'm interested how also if I was a guy, an international who needed a visa, I don't know if I would come here. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm going to do some follow-up work, but I'm laying groundwork here. I'm letting people know like what's going on with that. But like it is interesting. Yes. There you go.
$8,000, huh?
Yeah. As of June 2024, between 2030 and like $8,810. Now it is toward the lower end for the countries that we're mostly talking about here. But as I recall, I think it was under 1,000 before. Like I think it was in the hundreds, which is, I mean, not nothing, but like you're not doing this every day of the week. It's just essentially, I'm sorry, I'm racking my brain here trying to remember what that transfer fee was because I've done that paperwork, but I just cannot remember it. It gets a little complicated because like there's weird things like you can do like a visa is like visa paperwork or visa application is like $500, but you can put like 4 players on it and it's still the same like one fee. So I'm trying to piece it all together in my head a little bit, but it sounds like it's going to be at least 2,900, could be more. So that's going to be one of those things where if you're a fan and you're watching a team and you can't understand why a move was or wasn't made or why help isn't showing up, that could be it. Because that, yeah, unless you got a team that really wants to spend, but I mean, even among Atlantic League teams, I don't know if there's teams that want to spend for a guy who's already over here, so it's probably a partial year, $3,000, which is what a month's salary is for one of the top players in the league, but just to transfer a visa for a player who probably is not one of the top players in the league.
Pocket change for Frank Bolton.
You know, it's funny. I had them in mind when I was saying they wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Like that was probably one of the teams that wouldn't care as much.
They're probably like, thank God we lobbied for that. Now we can go out and get our pick of the litter.
Right. Oh my God. I would love to hear that it's just like some crazy, like everyone's like doing league politics and like Frank Bolton's out there doing like meeting with members of Congress to screw the other teams in the league. Oh my god.
If there's a guy to do it, I could see Frank Ball being
Oh,
dedicated to the cause enough.
if you put a gun in my head and said somebody's doing it and I had to guess, it would be Frank. Yeah, 100%.
Because he cares the most.
And for the record, like, I'm not saying he is doing that. I don't think he is. I'm not saying anything bad about him. I'm not saying anything. And for the record, I am at this point in my life having no thoughts of suicide. So if anything happens, investigate it.
Oh God! All right, let's keep moving. Let's go on to the next league
because we should probably roll through the other leagues faster than the Frontier League, huh?
Yes, we should. Atlantic League, surprisingly enough, is up next. Lancaster won 15 straight games. Then they lost tonight.
Yeah,
they
suck.
They did, in fact, tie a 24-year-old record that was set by Somerset in 2000. So I guess we can give them a pass on losing to Hagerstown tonight. They swept Staten Island, Charleston, Hagerstown, and Charleston again. Took 2 from Hagerstown. They also got a win against Long Island, too, to start this whole thing. Christian Santana, I think, solidified his MVP bid during this stretch.
Oh, my God.
OPS jumped 200 points. Batting average jumped 35 points, hit 9 home runs, a 12-game hitting streak in there, including a 4-game multi-hit streak. I mean, dude should not be in this league anymore.
I'm about to do the research on it, like, literally tonight and tomorrow. Like, what seasons? It's sort of because you can't find game logs for like past seasons, really. But I want to know who has this deep into the season and is batting 423. And then slashing 423, 472, 782. It's a 1254 OPS. Like, what's the next closest OPS right now? It's like, it's not near. I know that much. I just looked it up earlier. Here it is.
Would we say
next closest OPS is actually he is the second highest OPS, but Hess has only had 34. So if we're talking over 100 plate appearances, he's 140 points clear of the next closest OPS.
Gonna need some more home runs out of him, though. I need him to get this triple crown.
Dude, it is unreal. And we talk about, so that is the slash for the season, but I think over the past week, he's even better. He's like hitting 550 this week. I know at the time I did last week he had 6 home runs in 6 games, maybe.
Could be.
I mean, Jesus, dude, what are we doing out here? All right. Over the past week, he's batting 464. He's slashing 464 and 521, 952. Good for 1473 OPS over the past week. That includes, oh no, I'm sorry. That's over the last 30 days. Oh my God.
I have a genuine question. What's stopping him from going to Mexico at this point?
I don't know. There must be something, right? What the hell is happening? I gotta ask.
Because lesser players are getting picked up and sent over there. Not really knocking those guys. It's just like Santana's just like. God.
So Santana this week slashed 550, 609, and then 1250 on the slugging. Good for an 1859 OPS over the past week. That included 4 home runs, 11 RBI. I think. Oh, in his last how many games? I'll give you the last how many games because it's been a nightmare. And I'm sorry, just list stats off, but this is how it's been, man. Okay, since June 1st, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games, he has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 home runs. That'll work.
Sicko.
And he has, oh my God, 8, 14, 15, 19, 25 RBI in those 8 games.
He's a sicko.
What a bad person. Oh, wait. I got one more for you here. This is all I want to check, which is tied for 25th in the league in RBI if you don't count any of his RBIs before June.
What the
That's
hell?
a tweet. Give me a second. I got to put that one out there. Oh, good Lord. 6.
The only other player right now that's like as mesmerizing to me, and it's only in one stat category, is Ryan Weiss in strikeouts, who's at 73, and the next closest guy is at 56.
Yeah, it's going down over there. That's for sure.
He's hooking it. He's just like, I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't know how it's going to end, but I know it's going to go fast. 8, 5, 11, 6, 10, 8, 12, 6, 7. What the hell? They get tagged for 5 runs, but I don't get a strikeout 10. But yes, Christian Santana has been a large chunk of this season.
Mhm.
And after a large chunk of audio that has probably been cut, we
Mhm.
have determined that there's a very high chance he is now playing in Mexico for Chihuahua.
Chihuahua, baby. Congrats. You well deserved, though.
Exactly, yeah, which is what
What a run.
explain why he hasn't played since the 9th. So
Yeah. Unreal.
low key,
with those numbers.
low key, does he still get MVP consideration?
Oh, he might.
Like, I'm just saying, like, he's still like pretty far ahead for RBIs.
I'd love to do some more math on that. I'll have to check it. I haven't done it in a little bit. See how many wins above replacement he added. Pretty impressive. They kept winning after dropping him too. Got another 3 or 4 wins tacked on. Not bad.
Yeah, so I mean, you lose your best player, and that still is the case. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But that also then does explain and makes my previous statement of how are these lesser scrubs getting picked up and he's not? Well, actually,
ta-da! He has been.
Exactly. So
he's with those lesser scrubs now. Joke's on you, idiot.
God, am I the one eating my lunch in a locker? I don't know.
I am, but not because they made me. It's because I want to.
We understand you listen to My Chemical Romance. You didn't have to confirm that. But talk about the flip side. If Lancaster's on the high end, Staten Island.
Oh, boy.
North Carolina's kicking the hell out of them.
We got wheels falling off there.
2-8 in the last 10, 5 straight L's, 8 of the last 9 L's. They've been just straight up bullied by these North Carolina teams. Yeah. Since they swept Gastonia at the start of the month, they've been outscored 63-32. Damn. If you want to include that sweep, that series there, then it becomes 68-57, which is a lot better, really, when you think about it.
Facts.
But, I mean, not being outscored by 30 runs instead by 11. I mean, that's
you like to have that not happen.
Yeah. I think really the biggest thing is they're missing Robert Brooks. That's evident. They're missing Taylor Motter. That's evident.
Yeah.
And Sandoval disappearing is not helping. I mean, hitting 80, literally 80, 111, 80.
I mean, here's the issue there. The real issue there is the word on the street, which I will not be able to attribute any names to, but consider to be multiple names.
The streets are saying
this information. The streets are talking, and the streets are saying.
Many are saying.
Yes, I mean Taylor Motter is in Mexico, so he got a good situation there. But he was on the inactive list prior to that move. And what is being discussed is that this was a personality conflict, seemingly between Motter and, rumor has it, Sandoval. And it was a him or me thing. Sandoval is friends with the owner of the team. He played with him before, with one of the owners. And it was, him or me, so it was going to be Sandoval. And boy, I mean, that's tough. I mean, bad time for Sandoval to go completely cold when Motter disappears. Like it's just bad timing for everyone involved. But that's, I guess good for Taylor Motter. He's got himself getting paid out in Mexico. He's looking like the smart one. But that adds a little bit of a twinge of drama to the situation here.
Yeah, team saves face with that too. Makes
right,
it look a lot better.
No one asking questions. They want to avoid another Kevin Krause situation, I'm sure. Because that was embarrassing. That got some press.
Well, I need to know. Is Taylor Motter in the team photo?
I think he is. I think he was showing up on time.
Oh, thank God. At least he didn't miss this bus or his subway.
I'm fairly certain though. He wasn't super excited to hang around the clubhouse. So that is the word on the street on that, which adds a little bit of spice to the fact that seemingly Paulo Sandoval has forgotten how to hit, which is tough, man. I mean, I've got him going back. I said I keep my ratings up on my batters. He is over the last 7 days in last out of my 85 qualified batters for the Atlantic League. And it's not close. If it is on a scale where it's not really, wow, it's actually almost close. But the top sort of point value I'm giving to someone is a 36, and he is sitting at a minus 31.
I just want to point out, you're like, it's not even close. Well, actually, it's kind of close.
Well, I was going to say, it's not like it's 50 and negative 50 are like two sides of the same coin, equidistant from each other. It's not really that. The average right now is sitting actually at 0. Go Ryan. I'm okay with this. This is my janky for Ryan's use only scale of sort of batter value. But you're seeing a minus 31. The closest hitter over the last week is a minus 26. Average is 0. So that's bad, I would say.
Not good.
I would not say it's good. Over that stretch, by the way, he is 2 for 25 with 8 strikeouts. Does have a home run though. Count it.
Well, I think he got that.
Oh no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
He has an RBI.
Too many columns. Womp womp.
But it's not even just the batting for Staten Island. The pitching isn't there either.
Buddy, it's not.
Nobody's showing up right now. And it's like, what are we doing? We managed to go from genuinely contending for a playoff spot in this half to being under 500 right now.
Yes, it's not good.
And like the thing is, I can't tell if it's okay. Well, I mean, it's High Point and Gastonia. They're two really good teams. Who's to say, really? Or if it's just they're not that team. They're not them. Not built like that.
I will say before we get further into this, in defense of Pablo Sandoval, even with his recent 2 for 25 stretch, over the last month, he's still hitting 278. Now, the OPS is under 700. That's a problem. But anyway. So, when it comes to, are they legit?
Pitching.
I mean, the short answer is they're not legit. We kind of never expected them to be. We were pleasantly surprised by their start, but the surprise for a reason.
I mean, yeah, like Shawarren's not showing up, and even Capuano is now not.
I mean, this is about where we thought they'd sit. We thought this team would be an advancement. This team would be a step in the right direction, but they would not necessarily be a playoff team, though I would not put it past them to compete for a playoff spot like they did last year. But yeah, I mean, this team essentially now is kind of on pace for what we thought. So I'm not saying when I say they're not really competitive, they're not that team. I'm not saying it's panic time. I'm saying all right, that was not what the expectation was. The expectation was a step forward and setting yourself up for hopefully a playoff run next year. Though I'm sure if you ask the people in the front office and in that clubhouse, they would say otherwise because you always want to make it. But
yeah,
this team's had a rough couple of years here. They were projected to win 58 games preseason. That's about right. I mean, yeah, what, about 126, isn't it?
Yeah.
124, I think it is actually. I don't remember. Yeah. I mean, they're just hitting, good competition, honestly. This was bound to happen at some point. This is it. They're wearing this one, but I wouldn't sound the alarms. I mean, they played High Point a bunch. They got rocked by High Point. They played Gastonia. They got rocked by Gastonia, but they did take 3 from Gastonia, so they're not fully uncompetitive. They also got smoked by Lancaster, but that was in the streak that Lancaster started. So let's calm down. We're going to play York. That's not a great series, but hopefully you get one there, at least one there, maybe 2. But this is your division leader. But if you win 2, you're still in the race, by the way. But and then you got Long Island, and that's one got to get back. You want to take 2 out of 3 from Long Island, then you can take Lexington, and you should take 2 out of 3 from them. So you got Lancaster around the corner from there. So essentially, if I'm remembering correctly, where the end of the half is, the rest of their half looks like York, Long Island, Lexington, Lancaster, Hagerstown. Dude, they are not out of this race, if I'm honest with you. If York hits a tough streak and Lancaster loses a little bit of momentum here, it catches up to them.
Lancaster, I could see. York, I think it's a little bit tougher to see that happening to them. I'll agree that they have some easier opponents, but I mean, it's not really like they've done much over the past week and a half to really inspire the confidence.
I know it's only one game we're talking about, but if they take 2 out of 3 versus 1 out of 3 against York this coming weekend, I feel more like they're in it. You know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying. And admittedly, York hasn't been overly impressive outside of 3 or 4 guys.
Yes. And they are, they are 6-4 in the last 10. So they're not crazy.
This may not even be relevant, but do we know who's lining up to pitch for York?
Ooh.
Because I don't really like many of their starters. Olsen's the only one as of recent that's been
if
good.
You give me a minute, I can help you out with that one.
Okay. Because really, it seems like York's really relying on McDermott, Martin, and Washington with Casey to really get all the job done. Those are the four guys that are shouldering this load, and they're just kind of saying, "Hey, hope the bullpen bails out the 4 stars that can't pitch."
Okay, we're looking at Olsen, Neff, and Horrell for projected starters.
Okay, so Olsen, I like. It was Neff and Horrell.
Yes. Neff is being shelled.
Okay.
And Horrell is good, but he's not been starting very much. So let me see how long his outings have been. Since he hopped into the rotation, he went 5, 6, and 5, and he's allowed 7 runs. But he had a shutout in the middle of that, but that was against Charleston when they sucked that 1 week. So that's kind of tough. Okay. Yeah, he could have the concern there is that he's going to be pitching after Neff. And that's the thing. It is they might be a little bit drained on their pitching options in that game.
But do you just concede the Neff start as like, okay, you're going to have to tough this one out, bud, because we need to focus for tomorrow?
Maybe. I don't love doing that. Let me see.
I mean,
he did just have his longest start of the year, so they are kind of at that point with him, I feel like. I mean, his starts were 5, 5 1/3, 5, and then 2 2/3, 3, 4 2/3, 4 2/3, and now 6.
This is going to be a bad realization for me, but I'm just realizing Frankie Bartow's in York.
Yeah, that's there.
Yeah,
I mean, he got 5 in the second, and they were like, well, and he got another 2 in the fourth, and they were like, keep going. And he threw another 2 innings last outing. Only one walk, though, and I'm a silver linings guy, so how about it?
Yep. I'll bring it just back to Staten Island needs to prove something here coming up for me to really have some more faith in them again, because it seems like they're a bit of a paper tiger here.
Yeah, that's fair.
But anything else in the Atlantic League we really want to get to?
I don't think so. I think I'm good for now.
Okay, so then let's go to the Pioneer League. They should be fairly quick this week. We spent a lot of time over the past 2 weeks, both independently and here, talking about them. Boise's hot, Missoula's good. Everybody else I don't really know what to make of, and it's a bad look for Glacier to be dropping games to Ogden.
Yeah, can't have that, man. And they did absolutely demolish them last night, so that kind of helps the vibe. But
I mean, it's still they dropped 4 or 5.
Something. Oh yeah, they dropped 4 or 5. What was it? No, Glacier played a close one last night. Ogden got smoked by somebody else. That's my bad. It's all run together now. Let me see. Oakland won again tonight against Rocky Mountain. Getting some pitching last few nights, by the way. Not from everybody, but like 3 or 4 games a night, kind of going like 5-2, like normal baseball scores. Was it? That's the concerning thing for Glacier is that like Glacier lost that series to Ogden, and then Ogden went out, played Billings. They won 5-2 the one night though. So what do I know? They did get smacked though last night. It was rough. So I don't know. And that was my thought on this, and I'm going to do some research. I'll try to come back with it so we actually have something to discuss here. But I'm theorizing the Pioneer League is really hard to like track and predict because it's a league of streaks. Like I remember last year, like that run that Billings went on at the end of the year stemmed from winning like 13 out of 14 at one point. And it's just because it's a league where you're playing 6-game series against teams, and the teams are, well, in final record, they can be pretty balanced. The highs and lows are so aggressive for these teams. We're like, we have no pitching this week. When you have no pitching, you have no pitching in the Pioneer League. And you just get smoked for a week before you can kind of settle down and like rectify some stuff. And that's my theory, at least, because I just feel like we've already this year seen a few teams where like Missoula looked slow in their start, and then they whipped like 8 wins in a row out. And then Boise, looked fine, but then they went 8 in a row. Oakland had a little run there. Like Ogden lost a bunch in a row. Now they're 8-13. Like Ogden's playing, okay. Of course, that's been beating up Glacier. Glacier had their win streak, but now they had a losing streak. And I think it's just like you hit the bricks so bad when it comes to, a down week pitching wise because of like things not setting up well. And I hate to put the weight on the pitching, but it is that every team seems like they can hit in this league for the most part. So it's just that. And I want to I'm going to look into that because I'm betting they have the biggest average like win streak.
That's the thing. I just want to go on the pitching point. Is I've said it before. You need batting to win in this league, but pitching will lose you. Like you could be a great pitching team, you won't win this league, but you can't afford to be a bottom 4 or 5 pitching team. You just won't survive because it's just so easy for crooked numbers to show up, and it's hard to outdo the crooked number. But at the same point in time, it's like, kind of walking in like every game, we should be scoring at least 5 or 6 runs.
Minimum. Yeah. Kind of like that. You should view 5 or 6 runs, like 2 or 3 runs, and like the type of base we were thinking of.
Exactly.
I will shout out
expect 8
because we did clown them a little bit. Like Grand Junction has had a bit of a bounce back offensively. They're still losing games, but they're still last.
They're still hot under 300.
But they are not in the like 500s on OPS like they were. They're still batting 260, and that's an issue. But they have had some games that have lit up. I mean, that was mostly against Northern Colorado, though. So we'll see how this runs.
I will put no respect on any team in this league that is batting under 300.
No, you're right. I'm trying to give them something, but
I'm not giving them that. Get above 300.
What's this?
This isn't even like Idaho Falls where they're like 7 points under, so they're close. Which Glacier, I'm watching you. You're sitting at 302. Same thing with Billings. Get it up. Get it up. You're about to get clowned on. Get it up.
What is the...
Take advantage of those Roman ads. Get it up.
Jesus.
261. Get that disgrace out of here.
Yeah. I'm just doing some quick math here because I just stumbled into something interesting about Oakland. But it's going to take me about 2 minutes to confirm. I know that's not what we want to do right now. So if you have a point you want to drop, you can feel free to do that.
Really, I'm just kind of curious about Boise, who's the best pitching team right now and a top caliber hitting team. It's an interesting mix here. Normally we don't get to see both, but that's always a good sign for them. And it explains a lot why they're doing so well at this point. And it's not even really based off of power, only 18 home runs. Really, in slugging wise, they're slugging under 500, which wouldn't be that big of a deal for most, but in this league is kind of weird to not see them pushing that 500 mark, especially when the team above them in Missoula is slugging 600 with 41 home runs through 21 games. Oh my God. But still, like, Boise is an interesting team, one I want to watch out for. I like the staff there a lot. And, overall, I think they're an interesting team to watch. Missoula, you know what they're going to do. So I will be very curious to see how it shakes out with them, whether it's just hot or whether they're legit. It is curious nonetheless and all the same. Also, I just want to point out Luke Malone, the lone pitcher in this league, also for Boise with an ERA under 3.
He's so good.
Really talented pitcher. Gary, this is another prime example of the kind of guys you got to go get. Roll the dice on him. Player to be named later trade. Get him. If he doesn't do well there, send him right back. Nice and simple. And Adam Fogel in Missoula is looking very impressive so far. The slash line is gaudy as hell.
It's ridiculous. And even last night he homered again while they're getting crushed.
Yeah, they just show up there. So I really do. Those are two guys I want to point out. Yep. And for what it's worth here, I looked at some attendance numbers too. Oakland averaging just about 1,700 a game, 1,761 to be exact, through 8 games. So we'll watch that number there. I kind of want to see them a little bit higher there, but I'm not overly concerned yet. But I do want to see it go up a bit. And Idaho Falls, man, under 800 is not good.
Yeah,
we got to do something about that.
We're gonna have to talk to some people in Idaho Falls. I'm curious, is that like the expected start to the year lull? What was their attendance like last year? Do you have that quickly, or I can
pull it up. In 23, they finished with 1946.
Yeah,
and in 22 they finished with, once the page loads, I'll let you know, with 2,111. So it is a notable drop off here. Now, granted, each of those 2 other seasons have 40 more games tacked onto it. So let's wait and let's see here.
Right.
But still is a bit concerning when we're seeing these kinds of drop offs.
I agree. Yeah, Idaho Falls, man. That's interesting. But it could be a weather thing. I'll do the. It's been chilly. Idaho Falls is still chilly. I'll tell you that much.
We have the Oakland update. Through 9 games, their attendance has now dropped to 1,680 on average.
What's the total number so far?
In Oakland?
Yes.
15,119.
So since the home opener, which they sold out and they were thrilled to tell everybody.
Yes.
They were staying at 1,377 per game. So even brings it down a little bit further.
Yep. Tonight's game drew 1,036 people.
Yeah, the concern was that Friday, they really didn't do anything with the weekend. Like the attendance really was there this weekend, which is where you go, whoa, like hold on. Now.
I will say Christian Cosby though, 6 innings, 11 Ks tonight.
Yeah, nice. All right, I'd love to see that.
For him, yeah, honestly, a really good pitching performance all the way around. 2 earned on him. Then Connor Richardson, 1 earned, 1 inning, 2 Ks, and then Jake Dahl, a 2-inning save, no hits, no runs, 2 walks, 3 Ks.
We're getting some reasonable scoring bangers going on, man. Pioneer League's delivering.
Yeah, mostly by the Bay Area.
Getting some baseball scores.
All right.
Well, the mountains, the Pioneer League is delivering a little more bit of reasonable stuff.
Yep. The Ballers thing you were checking on, do we have an update on that?
It wasn't interesting. I was wondering, it seemed like they had a ton of home runs. I was wondering what the park factor looked like because we don't know much about their ballpark and how it plays. But their numbers are all thrown off because you need to compare to what's happening in their away games. And they were in Rocky Mountain for 6. And they've had, in their 6 games, like 100, well over 100 runs scored, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So, on that note, do we have anything else to mention in the Pioneer League, or can we keep going?
I think I'm good for now.
Okay, because the American station is going to take a little bit of time here, and we don't want to go too long here. So, off the bat, before we get to the Kansas City debacle, I do want to mention we're going to have a bonus episode out this week. But then there was a problem with the audio. Went to edit on Tuesday, and Kyle's audio was great. It was very clear, very crisp, no issues there. The problem was neither Ryan nor I were on the audio.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept noticing these giant gaps in there. I was like, what's with these gaps? And I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's where we were talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that creates a bit of a problem when we have great answers, but no question to go with it. So it really doesn't mean anything then. So here I am kind of torn because I don't want to just waste that audio.
Mm-hmm.
But I also just don't want to create a random question here, right? To go along with it, because that doesn't feel ethical. So, yeah, we already mentioned in the past we're going to have Kyle back on. That stands true. We're going to have him back on. But I do feel bad about not releasing it because he did take the time to come on and talk to us.
I know, it's a fun conversation, too.
Yeah, and I think it was very insightful and does add a lot of context to some of the things he's been doing. And I think adds some context to a conversation I want to have a little bit later on once we get to the Kansas City talk. Mm-hmm. So you may get that audio with me kind of doing the best I can to insert a question that best represents the answer, or you may not get it. I don't really know. And I kind of want to put the Gary audio before the Gary conversation because, you know, it would make the most sense, add the most context to the conversation we're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. You'll find out when we find out on that front there. But I do want to address that. There was every intention of releasing it. It's just the audio file didn't work right. So if the audio file doesn't work right, there's not much we could really do on that front.
Genuinely no idea what the problem is with that. We've never had this issue before. We have not had it since.
It just really bad. It's Gary real cat luck.
Honestly, is it not? Yeah.
What an odd situation there. But yes, so that's the context behind it. I don't want people thinking like we just decided to set them up or like we were doing something nefarious, if you would.
Nothing for you.
Yeah.
You get nothing.
You lose. Good day, sir.
I just referenced that in my last video too, and I was thrilled. And I think nobody got it, but that's okay.
Apologies to Kyle for not releasing that. Apologies for you not getting the bonus episode. You may have this audio at the end of the day. I don't really know. We're going to see what happens. So with that being said, now we can get to the part that was referenced in the cold open, which is we got to give the Kansas City Marks a yellow card.
Nice. Happy for you.
I'm very happy about that one too, because they messed up big time. So their game last Friday on the 7th had to be rescheduled due to poor field conditions. Okay, that'll happen. Then they had to move the now scheduled double header for the 8th to a different location, that location being the University of Kansas. And now they were made to forfeit the Friday game because now both weekend games are being made up the Sunday at Kansas. So to keep you in the loop here, because I know that was a little bit confusing, they were originally making up the game on Friday on Saturday. Then they could not make up either game at their current field and needed to move venues. This would have meant they had to make up 3 games in one day. That was not going to happen. And the league was not going to allow them to play a doubleheader later on.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to forfeit one of those games. So on paper, they forfeited the game from Friday the 7th. That's really all there is to it. Now you would think, oh, well, it can't get much worse than that. Oh, contraire. Yes, it can. Because they had a series starting that Monday against Sioux Falls, a 3-game set at home. Well, that couldn't be played there, so they had to move it again to the University of Kansas for all 3 games.
Oof.
It was free admission for those, and they have to comp the tickets for the games that would have been at Legends Field in Kansas City. I also do not believe there's any concessions. I know for the original weekend series, there wasn't, and you couldn't bring in outside food or alcohol. At least I know you couldn't bring in alcohol. I think you may have been allowed food, but I don't know for certain on that. It was only a quick Instagram story post, and I did not screenshot it because I didn't think it would be this relevant later on. But as it would appear, it is relevant. So at best case, they lost about 6 games of revenue, and now will have to repair the damage done to their field and then go back home. At worst case, they lost 6 games of revenue, have to repair the damage, and got nothing as far as concession or merchandising sale went, and have to comp the tickets and had to let in a free audience as well. That drew very poorly, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. Now, I know what the next question is. Why was the field bad? Well, that's because there was a tacos and tequila festival on Saturday the 1st, and then followed up by Phase Fest on June the 2nd, where Yellowcard was the main headliner, which I am seeing in about a month, which I'm kind of excited for that. Yeah.
Always topical.
Hey, yeah, I know it is. Plus, I'm seeing Third Eye Blind, same show, going to be great. It's not just a phase.
Yeah.
But yes, so they basically had a music festival and a food festival with music on back-to-back days, and the stages and the crowds damaged the field beyond repair on that short of notice. So they really did screw themselves. And in case you're wondering, the first series that got lost was against Fargo. The second one, as we mentioned, was against the Canaries. They went 2-3-1. The one's a forfeit. So really 2-4 for all intents and purposes in that stretch. And now the Monarchs sit in 3rd place behind Fargo and Sioux Falls.
Mm-hmm. It always has a way, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? So what are you thinking about this whole situation?
God, I think a lot. I've never been a fan of mid-season concerts for this series, like this exact reason. I don't want to overreact to it because it happens. I get it. Some of the info that we were getting from some local reporters, there's a couple sources that talked to me about it a little bit, which was they resodded in the off season. The process started late because of how wet the spring and winter has been. It didn't seem to take very well, and it was just very vulnerable to having this happen. I don't want to be like, well, you shouldn't be doing events and stuff like that, because like that is a major source of income that allows owners of teams to have these teams in the indie leagues. So I get it. My follow-up thought on that is I'm dreading the fact that this is very likely pushing the big picture indie ball move toward turf, which I hate. Yeah.
Should mention Legends Field is a grass field, and that these both festivals are coming to other American Association ballparks, including Milwaukee and Sioux Falls. And I believe in the case of Sioux Falls, that is a grass field too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I believe it's also going to Winnipeg. Winnipeg may be the grass field, but I don't know for certain. I think Sioux Falls may have just redone the field for turf.
I believe it is.
Okay. Point remains, though, that this Tacos and Tequilas Festival is coming around to all the venues.
Yes,
a lot of them
making the rounds. It is turf at Sioux Falls.
Okay.
Yeah, and that really my number one thing is I hate that this is eventually going to, push toward turf. I think it sucks, and that's kind of my main takeaway. I'm not really super. I mean, it's unfortunate. I'm sure things could and should have been done to help prevent this that weren't, but I don't know, man. I don't know. What are you gonna do? Now my main thing is I am surprised. I mean, we see the pictures. It seems to be dead grass. Now, I assume there has to be some like indentations in it, right?
Yeah.
But I have a hard time not thinking about the fact that the York vandalism issue last year, which I still so badly want to do a whole true crime deep dive into, but with what time, I ask? That field was really in rough condition. Like I was surprised how rough that was. I mean, it like chemical burned that grass, and there was quite. It seemed, a dip where the dead grass was, and then when they replaced it, there was eventually, they resodded, but it wasn't quite a direct match. They didn't resod the whole field, they just resodded the pieces they needed, and that was right in the infield. And I was knowing they played on that. I'm a little surprised that the American Association wasn't willing to play on this, or Fargo wasn't. I mean, hey, Fargo's one of those teams where there's always rumors around them getting some preferential treatment from the league, so that's worth keeping in mind. A bit of the Long Island of the American Association, perhaps. But
so you think Kansas City would get that treatment, though, with the Negro League Association and a very active owner?
The popular talk is that hey, look, this is just talk, so this could be better teams. You know what I mean? Fargo's had a lot of success. Yeah. But there seems to be a popular sentiment that they get away with stuff. Now, or at least they aren't enforced as quickly, or things just happen to work out for them a lot. So I don't know. You can say that or you won't. I feel like I'm not sure I buy into that fully, but it is an interesting subplot, if nothing else. Man, I don't even know what to say on it. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to say you shouldn't be doing the events, right? I'm not going to say we should get turf. Hell no. So it happens. It sucks. Should be a better job done, but whose fault even is it? We don't have that info, so it's just like, damn, that sucks. Unless you have a more nuanced take, which I'm open for.
I mean, I think it's not the first year they've held this festival, so clearly you haven't had too many issues in the past. But at the same point in time, you have a grass field. It's only June. And you knew that awesome part was the problem is it was almost a week later, right? I mean, they had 4 days to get this problem solved.
Yes,
going into it. So I can't even dog them for it going you knew you had a game to play on the 4th and you still held 2 things on the 1st and the 2nd. I have a hard time beating indie ball teams for trying to get a little bit of extra revenue in their operating window.
Right.
I can beat them a little bit for jeopardizing their main tenant and main thing, for more ancillary income. And obviously now they're paying the price for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I really have a hard time, saying you shouldn't earn. And they did build in a 4-day window, so it's not that bad. I guess my biggest gripe is holding back-to-back events was a lot for that field.
Mm-hmm.
Having 2 major crowd events was a lot. I don't know. I'd have to look at the schedule, but how many days before was Kansas City home for?
Ooh. I could pull it.
Because that changes my mindset a lot. Or could, I should say. I should say could. They were away at Gary for a while. They weren't home since May 26th, their last one. And then they were on the road until that 7th. So they had a lot of time built in for this. I guess I would have felt better. And obviously, there's only so much scheduling you can do on this front. And you have to take certain dates that are available to you. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, in reality, the only date you could have held it because it has to be a weekend thing. I almost feel like I would have felt better if they would have audibled that Lincoln series to be at Lincoln, put one on that weekend. So that end of May weekend, and then played a home series in there somewhere where it would have been previously away, and then had the other one the following weekend. So that way you at least had a little bit of time, a week in between events for the field to kind of, recuperate with.
Right.
Because now you're in this boat here where you just lost what should have been a fairly big weekend for you. Now you're about to go on the road again from the 14th through the 23rd. 25 is your next home game. So for all intents and purposes, you've been on the road the whole month of June.
Mm-hmm.
So now, because of less than ideal scheduling, which again, I don't know how much of a hand they had in, you put your team behind the 8 ball. And so that's really where my critique is. It feels like it could have been scheduled a bit better.
Agreed. I'm sure that was even considered beforehand.
Yeah.
I mean, a number of times I've heard the head of a grounds crew be like, it's a lot for the field. It's a lot in not many days. It's back to back. Like, I'm sure it's a conversation that happened, but.
Then also having the second half of a doubleheader on a Sunday night start at 9:01 in front of a crowd of 515. Only about 100 less than getting New England. Isn't that funny? That's not great either.
Yeah. I mean, they're just eating money left and right on this one.
I really want to know how much money they made on those 2 festivals, though.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine it's this, though.
It's not. I want to know what the loss is.
Yeah. It's probably pretty substantial. I mean, look, I hate it for them. That is brutal. And again, it's an organization that's trying their best and goes sideways. And now they're, I'm sure it's uncomfortable with the team. It's uncomfortable with the clubhouse. It's uncomfortable with, the league. It's uncomfortable with the other teams. It's uncomfortable with fans. It's uncomfortable with everybody. It's a bad look. It's a headline grabber because it's so weird. But I don't know what else I would tell them to do different. So,
it's just bad luck, really.
It is. It's extremely unfortunate.
There's ways where it could have been mitigated, but again, like I know some people have been beaten down the door, like you can't have this thing here, can't have this thing here. It always takes a toll on the field. But again, like how much money are you making from baseball season alone? These teams aren't cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
all right, so and that's an event where you don't have to pay the overhead of the talent a lot of the time. It depends on what the event is, but it's a very different situation. Like I don't know. You're
pretty much raking in money on that one. Like I'm sure you have to provide a little bit of just emergency service and security wise, but outside of that, you're probably just renting out your venue. So like,
we'll say it depends. I'm pretty sure a certain owner who was in Lexington for a while, I know absolutely just ate money on a concert just because they have no idea how to run concerts. Yeah, dude. It might have been.
We're going to assume that Mark Brandmeier is a little bit better versed in the running of outside events.
I would be tempted to believe that's the case.
Yes.
Thankfully.
So, do we have anything else to say on this, or can we move on to?
No, we can move on, man.
Okay. I do want to have a Garrett discussion. I'm not sure if that's going to be it. We're going to be able to fit that in tonight. But Fargo 8-2 in their last 10. Winnipeg coming on strong at 7-3, and same thing with Cleburne, really fighting for their division. And also O'Grady. He's having himself one, ain't he?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, I'm still putting the stats up. Fun.
I more or less looked as a whole there, which also a fun little aside to kill some time while you pull up your stats.
Mm-hmm.
I was going ahead, I had to move some stuff today, putting in an air conditioner. And one of the things I had to move was a bookcase, and I found a 2018 Brooklyn Cyclone media guide. And Ross Adolph was in that media guide. He was one of the 2018 Brooklyn Cyclones. And you'd be surprised, I found about 4 or 5 indie ball players in that media guide.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, that's kind of funny how this works out. Watch these guys play, and I didn't even realize it. So.
Yeah, right. I have a few of those moments, honestly, where it will be like, oh, he played in the Philly system. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, oh, I was there. I seen it.
Light. But
yeah, so we're
talking about O'Grady here, who I still think Santana is in the lead for the Dat Boy Award because he is that boy right now. But O'Grady's making a strong push, 1,200 runs, 40 RBI, only 18 walks, but also only 26 strikeouts, which for a power guy really is not that bad. Slash line's all right, 283, 369, and a 625 on the slugging. So pretty solid in that regard. Nearly 1,000 on that OPS. So that's nice. I just think he's a really solid contributor and a large reason why Cleburne is on the run they are at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's not quite there, but he's definitely, from a power perspective, he's getting it done. And in that lineup, you don't really need to do everything. That's why that lineup is so good. That's how it's constructed. So it's a good call out, though, because let's look him back here. I mean,
he's technically tied to the lead in home runs, and he's ahead in RBI.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying he had a slow start. I mean, at May 18th, he was hitting 179, and he's picked it up all the way up to 283 average, if we're talking average right now. But that was a 717 OPS at that point too, and he's almost at 1,000. So definitely a big turnaround. So I'm trying to also be like, okay, what is the pace he's actually on versus what was just held down by his weirdly slow start? And I remember Cleburne's whole offense was really funky for those few games there. Still don't know what to make of what the hell that was about.
Yeah, they're trying to sort it out a bit. Josh Altman's the other guy starting to sort it out a bit. Also, Ty Colbreth, dude, he just got an ERA at 1.
Yeah, there's some guys who are chucking it.
And he's just kind of flown under the radar for me.
Yeah, I think I shouted him out in the video not that long ago, but
I mean, really, my God, he's just been doing great.
Yeah, I mean, what is that? A 106 ERA over 34 innings pitched. Ridiculous. Yeah. Only 25 Ks to do it too, which is like, good, but it's not like,
it's not over. It's just he's pitching well. He's not overpowering guys.
I mean, 6.4 walks per 9 or 6.4 hits per 9 and 0.8 walks per 9. It's great.
Any other thoughts on any individual player or any team in particular?
Winnipeg keeps chucking it.
Yeah. Which I put up the thing going, should we have a complete game this early in the year pushing a guy? And again, I think some people thought I was criticizing the team. I really wasn't. I was asking the question, just I don't know if you want to do that as a team that really survives by their pitching, which I don't think is that controversial of a statement to say they're a pitching team. That's what they do. If the pitching doesn't show up, they're going to lose. And I was just I think you may want to be a little bit concerned. We're still in the beginning part of June. Let's settle down here. And I understand the point of hey, he's trying to get the guy signed. No argument here. I hope he does get signed. It's just, I think we got to be very careful with that kind of thing, especially when the guy's maxed at about 95 and now you're asking him to throw an extra 20 pitches. And I understand the efficiency was good and the velocity didn't drop. I get that. It's just, I wanted to just throw it out there as a take. And some people
I didn't
take
issue with it.
No one really did, but some people I'm not criticizing anybody, but some people were we need more of it. I'm I never said you needed less. I just there was something to watch.
But also, do we? I don't know. Whatever.
And I think at points we do. I'd like to see guys go 7 innings again. I think that's very helpful. But I also think we got to be smart about this.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
I don't really have too much else. I mean, for the American Association, we've kind of let this episode get late, so we can always dive in on the American gets a lot of love, so we can kind of pick it up any given week and get some good discussion from it. Hell, we already got all the field discussion, so it's not really a lengthy play. I get it.
True. So, I don't want to do the Gary conversation disservice, so I think we'll bump that to next week. And I think I will try to get that audio in that we only have half of. We have the whole thing, just we only have half of it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So frustrating.
Yeah. So yellow card on us.
Shut up.
But yeah, I do want to just drop some of the bullet points I have for that Gary conversation.
Go ahead.
Tease it, I guess. Some of the things I just want to identify here is, at least as far as fixing this team goes, and I do understand they had a better week this week than they did last week.
Mm-hmm.
They're very up and down kind of thing, but as of right now, it seems like we have a lot of the same problems still appearing. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the bigger questions is we got to make a decision on what we're doing about Lamar here, right? Because we're reaching the point where it's like, these are his guys, though, right? Like, this is the team he built, right? So, year one, I'll give you a pass on. We always say the same thing. Year one's hard, and if you're first year manager in indie ball, it's hard to build the connections and all that jazz. I get it. Year two, you start to build yourself into it, and then you get a little bit more leeway, but we expect to see some signs of improvement. Maybe not in record, but general operation.
Mm-hmm.
Year three is where we start to say, okay, now we want to see a step here. Now we're getting to the results part of it. And we thought we were kind of on that track last year. And now here we are, year four.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if 21 was your first year, 22 was the second year, 23 was the third year, 24, this is kind of like, especially with the way some of the peaks were last year at the beginning and end, I kind of expected you guys to be a little bit more competitive at this point. So, yeah. That, I think you got to make it. I'm not saying you got to get rid of them. I'm just saying we got to make a decision on this. And if the answer is to keep him, I think you need some better guys around him that can help recruit better. As you'll hear, if we do put out this audio with Kyle, we do talk a bit about roster construction here in that. And then this will make a little bit more comments or make a little bit more sense to it. But I think getting some more guys in there that have been around a bit could help. There's two names I think of in particular that I'll save for next week that could really help out. But yeah, that's part of it. I do think they need to start getting some guys from some other leagues. We mentioned Luke Malone as one guy that I would personally like to see get a shot. But Frontier and Pioneer League guys, right now what you have isn't working, so why not roll the dice with younger guys who may be cheaper too, and you'd have more years of control on, so that way if you see promising things, you could, in theory, get them back for another year or two and really work with them and, see what you can do to make that further better. And partially, I think is, we got to acknowledge it's still Gary, so all the challenges that come with it. I personally think you need to have 3 or 4 morale guys at all times on that roster. Just kind of, keep the spirits light, keep guys engaged, keep guys focused on it. I think locker room culture is something that needs to be focused on. I'm not saying it's bad right now, but I think there really needs to be an emphasis on it going forward. So those are some of the things I want to dive into next week when we have this conversation.
All right, and I'll try to put some thoughts on my end. Now I know that that's coming, so we'll see what we can do to sort of dissect the Railcats.
Yeah, maybe that'd be a good time to get Kyle back on. There's actually planned for this. Honestly,
it could be. That's a fact.
We'll text about this and get this sorted.
Right. I have thoughts. We'll talk. Yep. But anyway.
That brings us to where we are. I think that does it for this week. Been a decently long show. Hopefully one that was on some level entertaining. So with that said, we'll go to the plugs and then we'll get out of here. You want to take this one, Ryan?
Yeah, man. Indie Ball Nation, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, been posting sort of daily. I'm trying to find the best way to do some recaps, like day to day, not just the series, like the twice a week thing. Because I feel like every time I do that, I end up just talking about the series the whole time and what happened and not actually talking breaking things down as much as I would like to. So I'm just doing quick, minute-long videos every day for each league on my Instagram. So check the Indie Ball Nation Instagram, and we'll see how long that lasts before I go completely insane.
The Miracle Minute.
So, Fridays, either Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, I am usually posting on YouTube. So if you don't see anything and you don't see any recaps, it might be because I already posted on YouTube. So keep an eye. Follow everything, maybe subscribe or follow and get a notification. Whatever it is that actual YouTube people would tell you to do that.
Isn't that neat and nice?
Neato,
Steve-O.
Hate it.
Indie Ball Pod on Twitter, Indie Ball Report, everywhere else. Putting up posts, still working on stuff. You know the deal. That'll be fun, supposedly. But, yeah. So I think that just about does it. Until next time, don't forget to play ball. Alright guys, so here is that audio from the bonus episode that we mentioned earlier that we weren't able to get off the ground. If you're coming off of episode 275, then you know the whole backstory behind it and that the recording did not go well. We lost quite literally half of it because you don't hear me or Ryan on nearly the entirety of the original recording, which made it borderline not usable. But Kyle's audio was perfect, Kyle being from Real Cat Talk Podcast. And I just feel bad not using it at all, but it took a long time to figure out a solution. So here's kind of the middle ground. I'm tossing that audio on now at the very end of the show. And you guys are obviously up to date on everything because you just came off the 275. Here's that audio. Use it as kind of like a prep course or a crash course for the Gary discussion we plan to have next week. You'll get more details on the plan for next week, or at least the hope for next week at the end of this. So enjoy this nice little bonus 30 minutes. So here is our modified interview, I guess, with Kyle from the Real Cat Talk Podcast. We opened up this conversation by asking Kyle about his fandom, how he became a Real Cats fan, and what that experience is like. And then it began to delve a little bit into why the team is currently struggling on the field and what might be part of the cause of that.
So if I'm going to be a little bit truthful here, when I started the podcast, I really wasn't a huge Real Cats fan. I started it because I was wanting to get into broadcasting and COVID hit and it kind of screwed everything. So I had to, get work, living, got married, life, that kind of stuff. So it was just like, then I wanted to get back into it. And I was like, oh, no one's really covering Gary. And you don't really have any problems there. I mean, it's Gary. Like I said, you get Gary. And then going to the games, you don't, I've said it multiple times, you don't feel unsafe. You right up. I mean, it's no issues inside, outside the ballpark. Like it's right there. You got two highways that intersect it. Like there's just busy traffic area there. So like, you can't really, there's nothing. I made this comment. I said, you have a better chance of something happening bad to you at a White Sox game than you do at a Real Cats game. like that's just, I'm just saying that's how bad that situation is. But really going really into the third year of doing this, the fans, you have a true dedication of fans. You have the rowdy cowbell crew who is ran by a handful of people that are always at every game. You know where they're at all the time. We got their own little Facebook group that are always involved in everything. You go there and you see the familiar faces all the time, and that you get there, you have fun. I mean, it's like you go to Gary and you feel like you're an actual like MLB park almost to a certain extent. I mean, that's how the feel of the game is it's there. But going on the aspect of, when they were in the Northern League and jumping into the American Association, they were really good. They had good teams, and Taggart put good teams together. But at that time, that era was almost sort of like the Frontier League to a certain extent. You didn't have the bigger named players. You had more of the college aspect players to a certain extent, not crazy amount. Now you're falling into the cold spell of when you jump in the American Association. They're trying to compete with the Atlantic League, so you're trying to open up your rosters to a certain extent and not constrict the age restrictions too much. And I just think that Gary has fallen behind just because Taggart is more of a frontier coach, as he is now in the Frontier League. But that's beside the point. Now you have, talking with Lamar, he doesn't have those connections, and he's trying to get those connections, and he's starting to. You kind of see it a little bit more with the. I know the offense really hasn't been the best, but the pitching has been the absolute. As example in this game, the big point behind this is just they have really one bad inning that screws the rest of the time around, and you can't do anything because you're down by 6 runs, or in this case 17 runs in the bottom of the 3rd inning. Like, you're not going to catch up. No offense is going to catch up, like, unless their pitching staff completely falls apart. It's just, but it's just one of those situations. I think that we're still in that lull of trying to transfer into a different aspect of the league, and we're just not at that point yet.
Next, we move to talking about the roster construction and what are some of the challenges around the team in regards to that roster construction, with a particular focus on the pitching, especially starting pitching.
But I mean, that's the thing is, like, this team is, they have one good game. You're like, they could play with anyone. They take 2 or 3 against Kansas City, and granted, Kansas City kind of fumbled the bag on that one because of the error that ended the game. But it's just, and then they have games like this where it's just like, why?
So we're talking a little bit about the starting rotation as of recent, and we're just kind of wondering what's happened wrong and what pieces are working, what pieces aren't working. That's the main takeaway from this section. We continue that starting rotation discussion and really who's supposed to headline and what's happened since in the next section, and also the section after that. So this next about 5 to 10 minute stretch is really focused on that starting pitching. This is the first part of that conversation.
So the starting rotation started out with Sanabria, and then Irwin, and Sanabria pitched today. This is where it all started. And in his last start, he started out the game by hitting the first batter you saw on this first pitch. Like, we already knew this was going to be. It was against Sioux Falls, so it was just like we already knew it was going to be bad at that point because. So it's just depending on the pitching staff. I mean, after DNA got his contract transferred to the Mexican League, then Anders Diaz comes in. He's pitched very well. I mean, he's had 2 starts, 2 wins. I mean, he was named pitcher of the week for the American Association. He had a good game against was Kansas City. It's just like hit or miss. You know, you don't have a solid pitching crew, and a lot of times is the solid relievers don't get to pitch because the game is already out of hand. So you're just kind of throwing in players to fill. Yeah.
We then followed up that response by further asking about the starting pitching, particularly as to who was supposed to be the ace of this staff, who was supposed to lead the way for this version of the Gary South Shore Railcats.
I don't know. It should be Irwin. He should have been the ace. I know he was coming off the arm injury, but he should have been the ace, and he should have been the one starting at the first. But I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point, just because we're probably going to see him tomorrow. But I'm surprised Irwin started when he did, because he was coming off of that arm injury from last year, and he was supposed to come in like halfway through June or like beginning of June, so he came back I think a little bit early, so he's still kind of working himself back into it.
So not only that Irwin was hurt and was originally slated to be that real ace of the staff, we then transitioned to ask who should have came in to fill in that gap in the rotation, and this was the response.
Okay, but yeah, I was surprised that Yohan Valdez wasn't going to fill into that role, and I imagine that after Tiedemann's 2 terrible starts and Sanabria's 2 terrible starts, I'm going to imagine that he's probably going to be coming in. We're going to have to figure something out. I think the hope was maybe for like a Franklin Perez to come back from his arm injury that he had and work himself out, get him stressed out, but he just hasn't produce the way that the number 3 overall prospect in all of baseball isn't coming to fruition just because, obviously arm injury and it had been out of the league for a while. I mean, it's going to be different, but.
So we switched gears back to asking a little bit about the fan base, and we also asked a lot of what the sport culture is like in the Gary area, and is the team being in Gary having an adverse impact on the team? Does that create any sort of challenges? And that led to this response.
Yes and no to a certain extent. The issue is that most people don't understand what independent baseball is in the first place. And, you have something that's sitting there that you could go to that's affordable and it's fun atmosphere to go to, especially in the prime days when it was full, it was packed. A lot of people enjoyed going, but the issue is I would rather go watch the Cubs play or the White Sox play, but they're right there. So why should I drive through Gary and go there and watch them? Because I don't understand what this league is. So when you have to explain it to someone what the American Association is or what the Railcats do, they don't understand it. And also you have to go this whole spiel of it. And so people don't have the time, nor do they care about it to really try to get knowledge of it. And so I think that's why one of the things that led me to do this was we have a baseball team in Northwest Indiana, and most people in Northwest Indiana are very loyal to their fan to their teams. I mean, high school baseball, football. I mean, if you ever out for Friday night football in Northwest Indiana, the fields are just packed all the time because that's just people love their football around here. So it's just one of those that you're loyal, but it's no one knows Gary enough to understand it, and you hear the word Gary and you're like, I'd rather not today.
Bring it back to on the field now. We asked more about what this team needs to improve upon because we want to take it in more of a positive direction. You got to acknowledge when the team's not doing well. The team hasn't been doing well. We want to know what should this team focus on? What is some of the larger issues that they have faced this season that should have either been addressed in the off season or need to be addressed going forward to try and salvage this season?
The priority list would probably be pitching. I mean, that's just it's got to be. I mean, it's and the hard part is you look at the pitching sometimes and it's not like, oh, it's god awful except today. It's okay, you had the one bad inning and your offense is only producing 3 hits. You're not going to really be able to do much there. It happens. But then you have games where they're giving up 6 runs on 8 hits or 10 runs on, 10 runs on 11 hits, however you want to put it, or today where you're, breaking the American Association record for walks in a game in an inning and 2/3. But I think that's the biggest issue is I think, the offense can go through its ebbs and flows, of ups and downs, but when your pitching is more consistent, you have a better idea of what you have. So I think really this year it should have been more of a less going out for that starting rotation and seeing if you can find some starters, get your middle to the road relievers that can spell you, a bad game here or there, and then get a couple of your setup guy and a closer. Which, I mean, I think that's what they wanted out of Yohan Valdez. I think Josh Smith is a good one to go with. I know Nate Alexander has pitched the back half of most of the innings when he has pitched. I would surprise that he might get a start coming into it. I think that's another one of those ones that I think he was pulled from the Pioneer League, I believe. Yeah, he was from Boise last year. So, and the 2 things to take away from both Tiedemann and Alexander coming both from the Pioneer League is their home runs weren't awful. They were actually pretty good in the Pioneer League aspect of it. So I just think that this year was one of those that the starting pitching hasn't been there, and like you guys discussed it, you're like, who do we put at the starting rotation? Like, I can tell you who we've been pitching, but you don't have the top of the line. I would say on the hitting side of things, as weird as it may say, I don't. The power for Gary has been the best it's probably ever been, and in the realm of being in Gary in the first place. I just don't think the speed's there, and the getting on base has been awful. Like, they just swing at everything that they see, and it's just one of those that you're like, okay, well, we got to get a big inning out of this when you go 1, 2, 3 in a matter of 6 pitches. Like, that's not going to help anything.
Following that up, we went to a question more or less on carryover year from year. It does seem to be more of a philosophical issue with the team. Are there consistent issues that go around and around, or are these roster and lineup shortcomings, which we did ask for a little bit more in-depth view on, are they more newer or are they more consistent across the board? That was what we were trying to get at. Here was the response.
I would say it so far in the Lamar Rogers era is the consistency between the pitching and the hitting has been off. So last year was a little bit different. They kind of started out a little bit hot. So you're thinking, okay, this could be a good year, but a lot of times it's the pitching does really well and then there's no hitting, or the hitting does really well or mediocre and the pitching is just not there. If you really want to dive into the numbers this year, if you want to break down like every game almost, most of the time it's 1 or 2 innings that the pitching staff gives up multiple runs, and it's either early on in the game or it's later on in the game to where you've dug yourself a hole to like you go out there and you give up 6 runs in 2 innings and you're like, I can't, how am I supposed to, I'm swinging for the fences every time because I'm trying to get us back on the board instead of just taking it a game or, an inning at a time or run at a time. They're just trying to all pack it onto once. And I think that's the biggest issue with the lineup is that Lamar's trying to get more power into the lineup, and you kind of would expect a little bit of that, but the numbers just aren't really there. Rincon's been the only one that's really kind of produced those numbers. I mean, Del Valle comes back and he hits a 3-run bomb in yesterday's game, but that's just not there. So they're hitting singles. I mean, yesterday, I think they hit like 1 or 2 doubles and the rest were singles and the 1 home run. So like they were scoring, but it was just all off of singles and doubles. Like they're just not, it's small ball, but not small ball players.
So is this team trying to play a certain way and they're just not built to play that way? Is it just that simple where it is a roster construction issue where they're trying to be a pound the ball out of the yard type team when instead they should be operating more in a nickel and dime, base it here, get a double to drive in a run there type of team, and it's just not, there's not the pieces to play the correct style?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just take example last year. I mean, at the end of the year, stolen bases wise, Diaz 37, Mariaga 28, Lingual and Woodworth at 25 and 20. And this year, Diaz has stolen 6 bases, and the next one's Basabi at 2. Like, they're just not, there's no production. Once you get on base, there's nothing that's pushing you forward to get to that. You're hitting singles. But the hit and run last year, if you're watching the games, a lot of times Diaz would get on first and Valera would be second, and they would do a hit and run, and Valera would pop the ball over to the right side. Second baseman would go to cover the bag, and Diaz would be standing at home or at third. That setup's just not there anymore because you don't have the speedsters. You don't have that. I mean, yeah, does Mariaga not being in the lineup hurt? Yes. But one player is not going to completely change this roster and the lineup. I mean, it's going to help, but it's not going to change the issue that's going on this year.
Is it that guys just don't want to play that way, or is it that they're not physically able to play that way? What is the exact issue there?
Yeah, like this is just the issue. the issue is that a lot of the people that are getting on base aren't fast enough to steal.
I followed up by asking them, is it that the ballpark is set up for that kind of home run hitting action, or is it just the ballpark naturally lends itself to a more small ball style of play? Should that be the way they're going? Because it could help mitigate the fact that you're not getting that power and seemingly are able to at least have some guys producing in the lineup, even if it is not ending in runs. Is it a, for lack of better term, power hitter friendly ballpark? Is it a contact hitter friendly ballpark? Is it just a hitter friendly ballpark in general, or is it play more in favor of pitchers?
So at the Steel Yard, I mean, so center field's 400, but just left of that, it's probably more of like a 425 ish. It's a little bit further gap, I would say. It's your traditional setup. You know, when you look at a traditional, nothing too extreme, except in right field they brought the bullpens in, and a lot of the times home runs that go that way don't clear that second wall. That was the original home run out of field play, so it ends up in the bullpen. So the numbers on the aspect of a hitter's to a batter's ballpark, or hitters in a pitcher's ballpark, I would say it's more of a pitcher's to a certain extent. It depends on where you hit it. There's been plenty of times where the people have nailed the ball into left center field, and you think that thing is gone by a mile, and it hits the bottom of the wall. It's just because it just plays so deep. But then there's plays that go over to right field, and you're like, it could. And then next thing you know, it's a no doubter. Like, it's just one of those. It just plays shorter in certain areas.
Building on that ballpark conversation, we asked a bit about power numbers in the ballpark, and more specifically, he mentioned if you hit the ball to a certain part of the ballpark, it's a lot easier to get those power numbers than if you head to a different part of the ballpark. So we asked just to expand a little bit on that and explain, you know, we know there's an uptick in home runs, let's deal with that. So this is more or less a conversation on power numbers in the ballpark.
I think a lot of that has kind of been based off the pitching staff that's been brought in to a certain extent. And I think with the lack of power numbers for the Railcat, you're seeing more home runs than you're used to, but I think it's the aspect that it's a hitter's ballpark because it's a little bit bigger, so the balls are staying in. There's just certain parts of the ballpark that you can hit it that turns maybe a double into a close to inside the park home run, or a single into a triple, just because of the way it plays and the way. Yeah, so like you're seeing more. Necessarily more home runs, but outside of that, it's not. I don't think the field itself has changed from the numbers.
We continue on by asking a bit about the philosophical difference between Greg Taggart and Lamar Rogers in roster construction, and why one manager seemed to have a little bit more success than the other in those terms, and how you wouldn't see the same power numbers in Gary as you would in, say, Cleburne or Sioux Falls.
And I think that has to do with they had success with Taggart because he played that small ball, and Lamar Rogers isn't necessarily that small ball type of manager. I mean, he was groomed in the Houston Astros organization, and that's, you know, that he led some of those players that played for him ended up on the World Series team. So I just think that it's one of those, he knows what the MLB wants, and he's trying to get those kind of players, but that's just, the ballpark's just not designed for that. You're going to get those doubles, and then you're going to hit those sack, you know, the sack bunts and the small ball aspect to a certain extent. If it was a major league stadium, it would be a little bit different, but it's not. I mean, it's at best a double A to a single A, like as far as talent wise is what you're kind of getting. So you're not going to, those people that can hit a lot of home runs at certain ballparks like the Birdcage or at Cleburne. They're not going to get those all the time at the Steelyard just because of the way it plays.
This all led to us asking the question as to how much is roster construction responsible for this. And the exact phrasing of the question, I don't exactly remember. And the reason why that is pertinent is just because of the start of Kyle's answer. That does matter how we originally phrased the question. So it's not the best representation of the question we asked, but what we did ask essentially boiled down to talking about the roster construction and how has Lamar constructed this roster, and how successful has it been?
And I've been asking myself that for 3 years now, is how you put a good team together. I would say maybe outside the first year, because that was mostly a Taggart roster. And then last year he was trying to overhaul it to him kind of his style, which I think kind of worked towards the end of the year. And it just hasn't progressed over to this year, just because a lot of the bullpen and the starting pitcher they're either done or they're like in international somewhere, Mexican league or Japan. There was a couple in the Japan league, Japanese league, that kind of stuff. So like the bullpen on that aspect has kind of been dismantled a little bit. But as far as like hitting wise, you're just not getting you're not getting the consistency that you would have seen last year. Like, okay, you traded Sierra for Lingua, and Lingua is a better player at the Steelyard than Sierra is. I mean, right now Sierra's hurt, but he's batting a 128. Like, he hasn't done, as a shortstop, he really hasn't been productive.
Following that, we then asked, is this Lamar's fault? How much weight does he bear in this? He is the man that built that roster, and he's making moves for players that don't necessarily fit. Then he does bear some responsibility in it, but is it more his fault, or is it more other factors?
I don't think it's Lamar. I really don't think it is, because a lot of people want to blame him. But when I look at the roster, I think this roster is good. They're just not producing. And that's the biggest issue is the people he's brought in. Like, you can kind of see their flaws and where their flaws are at, mostly in the pitching staff, but not so much in the hitting. You expect people to draw walks. You'd expect them to drive in more runs, and they're just, it's not to that point. And could they be a piece or two away from being better? Mariaga with Del Valle coming back in 6 games, he's batting a 304, already has a home run, a double. He's brought in 4 runs. They scored 5 runs already. So like, he's producing, he's coming back in. So when Mariaga comes back, if he's going to be better, that could help. That's 2 people that can produce for you. And then that could spark, Castillo coming back around, Diaz coming back around. It's just the inconsistencies to what you should be expecting.
So it is a good roster, or at least on paper looks like it should work. But we have had the conversation about roster deficiencies. With all that in mind, are there any other areas of need that we should include in this conversation, as we have with some of the other areas like starting pitching? Is there another piece of the roster that sticks out to you as this should have been addressed but has not been addressed yet?
And the other biggest roster construction I would probably critique is you have 2 batters on this team that can hit left-handed. And with the bullpen being brought into right field, you would want power, because a lot of the times the left fielders or the left-handed batters are going to hit the home runs that way. And that's, I would say, I think you're missing that. But the issue is like, I would say the prime example of bringing in a player, not even from the Frontier League, but the Pioneer League, was Gio Diaz. Last year, Lamar told Gio, he goes, I'm going to probably have to cut you in spring training. and every day he came in and he took someone's job. He took another person's job. He took this person's, and then he established himself onto the roster. I think that's what they're kind of hoping with the Brandon Fields, who's coming from the draft league, still trying to accustom himself to the professional atmosphere. He has talent. He's just not professional talent just yet. There's been a couple times where his second game he played, he got 2 hits, and then next thing you know, he has terrible base running. It just feels like those sort of stuff that he could have done in the draft league or like in college, he just can't do it here because there's people that actually can throw you out from that spot. So there's hope, and I think with like a Peyton Long coming from Rocky Mountain, I think he has some good talent to him. I would say like a Nate Alexander, a Ty. I just don't know about him right now. He was one of Ty and Nate were both the first 2 signings this year for Lamar, and so I was thinking, oh, okay, Ty picked up from Spire City after that debacle of getting rid of that team. That's beside the point. Is Anders Diaz is only 22 years old. Like he's young. I mean, there's the young guys and then the mix of the old guys to a certain extent. I mean, Quintana is not really that old. He was born in 2001. I mean, he's been around the American Association for a couple years, but he has something to him.
We asked, has there been any sort of life, or when do you notice the most life in this team? When do you see them get energized? Is it when the team shakes up, or is it when there's more of a doubling down on the guys and almost pat on the back from Lamar saying, yes, I'm trusting you guys. You are my guys. Go out and prove me I'm right. When do you notice that this team really comes alive and performs?
A lot of times when Gary goes on this really big run of hitting and scoring runs, is there's a huge roster switch up, because at one point you had Gio was the leadoff hitter. He goes down and he bats 9th, and then you bring Gonzalez up to bat as the leadoff hitter, and you just kind of move a bunch of people around. That goes good for a game or two, and then it goes back down to can't hit the ball again, so we're going to switch it up. And then just, it's like yesterday, I mean, Gio bats lead off, you move the lineup around, everything works out perfectly fine, and then you turn into, well, the pitching doesn't help when you give up, but probably up to like 20 walks now, but
at this point, we had been recording for about an hour and change, about an hour 15 or so. So we decided this would be a good wrapping up point, because we did still have to record all of episode 274 at this point still, and it was getting a little bit late on. So we tossed Kyle to the, if you want to say anything, say whatever you got to say, that whole thing. You'll also notice here, you start to begin to hear me in the background here. It was very weird. The last about 5 minutes of the original audio, parts of me were able to be heard, but occasionally I would cut out. So the problem that we had for about the first hour and 10 minutes of that recording was not completely solved. So if you hear a little bit in the jumbled background, that is the recording starting to kick back to me. You will notice, though, at no point do you hear any bit of Ryan. I assume that just means Google Meet has good taste and just did not want to really have him on at all. Or there's just something wrong along the whole recording, because as we mentioned, this whole recording session was plagued with the issues, and it could very well have just been a weak internet signal that I definitely battled for a non-insignificant amount of this recordings. But we throw it to Kyle for just some good well wishes.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I mean, I listen to you guys. I try to listen on every Saturday, but sometimes it's I gotta wait till Tuesday to listen, because I got. It's like it's not. I'm like, all right, it takes me about an hour to cut my yard. I'll pop my headphones in and listen to it a little bit, and then
right.
You got other, we got Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm listening to all the podcasts going on with that. I got too many podcasts I listen to in the morning, and the work doesn't help. I can't listen to anything at work, but.
And then finally, here are just Kyle's plugs. Yeah, that is the only bit that is left from this recording session. Once again, thank you to Kyle for coming on the show. Deeply apologize that we weren't able to get this thing sorted out and recorded to release on its own. In the end, I think it's going to wind up adding about 30 minutes or so onto the actual show itself. So in theory, I guess I could have done it this way and got it out on Wednesday or Thursday, but I didn't really want to have this thing get buried between two episodes. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't know what the status of this recording would be, and I still don't know what the quality of this impromptu on the fly way of fixing things is going to be like. So hopefully it wasn't too bad. We will have Kyle back on in a more structured discussion, hopefully for next week's episode number 276, in case you're listening to this at a later date. And hopefully he can be part of the larger Gary conversation that I'm hoping to have on that episode. But once again, appreciate him coming on, and apologies for not having this go smoothly as we had hoped it would go. That being said, thanks for hanging in there. Hope you guys enjoyed this and enjoyed this little extra bit on the end of this week's show. And until next time, don't forget to play ball.
Anything Railcast Talk. That's I only do Spotify. I can't do any other. I can't keep track of that kind of stuff. But yeah. YouTube is mostly where I go. Facebook, Twitter, or X. I do have my own website that's up. That I kind of post some stuff to like articles for like new players that come in. Just write a little bit about it. All my podcasts are gonna be set up there. I try to do the Railcats Quick Minute every day, but depending, weekends are going to be a little bit rougher, like when I go to the games, because I go to mostly every game, so it's like kind of hard to come back and do it. But Railcast Talk podcast on most platforms that you want to follow, that's where I'm at.